Hey everyone, this is George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast. I recently watched the latest Jonathan Haidt TED Talk, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't initially see the TED Talk. I saw a snippet on Instagram that showed about a 90-second portion, and it wasn't sequential. It was part of it in the TED Talk, and then it made it seem like it was sequential. And the only reason I knew that it wasn't is because I actually ended up watching the whole thing, which I did a little bit reluctantly, and not because I didn't want to see the information, but part of the reason is because our attention span is terrible. We always talk about this with kids, but it's also the adults that I was like, now I have to watch the whole thing. And the thought that I think this is what really matters. When TED Talks first came out, the thought of an 18-minute video, an 18-minute lecture in education seemingly was too short. It was unbelievable that this is just 18 minutes. That's all there is. And now it's about 17 minutes too long, that it's really hard to pay attention. But there's a reason I watched the whole thing, and I pushed myself to do so. But I didn't just watch the whole thing. I didn't just watch 18 minutes. I watched the entire thing, paused it, wrote notes, blogged about it, and took me about 3 hours, and I have one blog post out of it. But I'm going to write another because there's a bunch of things I wasn't able to get to through the process. Now, you often hear about, handwriting versus, taking picture, and I've written about this in the past as well. The interesting thing is, what does this do to my brain when I sit and watch a video and do nothing with it? I honestly don't know. But I know that there's so much more that I learn through the process when I sit with the video, I pause it, I write notes, I make a connection to my own learning, my own experience, my own understanding. That has to do something. And if you knew me prior to when I started blogging versus today, I know this sounds weird. I am way smarter than what I used to be. I feel like a little bit of the book Flowers for Algernon, where Charlie Gordon takes this pill, becomes smarter. Eventually it doesn't turn out so well, but maybe that's just going to happen to me. Sorry if you've never read the book, but blogging has done that for me, is really opened up my mind and really pushed me that now that I have access to so many things in my mind because I've taken the time to write them. And is this something we encourage students to do? I'm a huge advocate. I know I'm super old. I'm recording this in June of 2026. I'm still advocating for blogging, but we always are talking about kids are not writing enough. They're not, processing their ideas. And then we're pushing them just to media. To wrestle with this information really, really matters. And I wrote a blog post about this, and there was something distinct, and I'm going to get to it in a second, but the initial quote is this: in a time when technology makes many aspects of our lives much easier, helping students develop the mindset to pursue what is difficult, meaningful, and worthwhile has never been more critical. I'll explain this to you more in a second, but I wanted just to kind of give you that context. What is the context of all of this information is that technology is so much easier than what it used to be. And at the beginning of the blog post, I write this: how can educators help students embrace challenge in a world where technology makes so many things easier? I wrote about this extensively in Forward Together. The technology has become so good that if we are not intentional, we will become dumber in the process, that we will actually lend all of our thinking to the technology, which is why we got to be involved with it. The story that I shared from the blog post is something I think about all the time. When I was younger, I used to love sleeping in the basement of my house. We had a 3-story house, and my parents slept on the top level, and I used to have a room right close to them. But as I got older and I was the last child at home, I used to sleep in the basement because I love watching TV to fall asleep. So much so that I have trouble falling asleep without noise to this day. That's a whole other conversation. I wish I could be better at that. And I used to watch TV late at night. I used to think of the shows at Friday night videos. If you're listening to this right now and you have Friday night videos, I love you. So something like that. But there's these infomercials that came on, and I don't know when they first started coming on, but these half-hour advertisements, and there was one that I remember distinctly. It was the Flowbee, right? It was a vacuum that actually also cut your hair, so there was no mess. There was also the Bowflex, Tybo, things like this. And I remember thinking that as, someone in high school, someone just going into university, who is buying this stuff? Like, who is getting suckered into buying these ridiculous products? Like, what is going on here? No one's watching this and actually, doing this. So fast forward to, I think I was maybe 48, 49 years old and 51 today. Late at night, since I'm an old man, I have to pee quite a bit, probably TMI. That's why we do the podcast off the cuff. And I get up, so having trouble to fall asleep, go onto Instagram, just scrolling. And then I saw, all of a sudden I get this targeted ad. And it is for this cream that you put on your stomach. And it actually is supposed to remove your love handles. And what do? At probably 2:30 in the morning, I buy the cream. Because who doesn't want to get rid of their love handles? Unfortunately, it doesn't work because I bought it. And I can tell you that. You have to, be in a calorie deficit, things like that. But the reason I tell you all this is I realize, it's me who'd buy these things. It's me. We always talk about kids doing dumb stuff online. And here I am getting suckered by this product without any, looking into it, without any information. It just catches my emotion. I buy the product. And weirdly enough, think about buying the Flowbee. You got to make a phone call. You got to give your credit card information, do all this stuff. I'm sitting on Instagram, boom, boom, Apple Pay, bought. It, again, so easy that those decisions getting your way doesn't actually, cause the problem to actually make a dumb purchase. So why am I telling you all this? Why am I explaining all of this stuff? And I go back to the TED Talk, not a TEDx, it's a TED Talk. And I don't know, it's interesting because here is an organization that has made these conversations really accessible to people unless you want to go. And then they're really inaccessible because you got to pay. I think I shouldn't say because I'm not 100% sure, but I know it's a lot of money to actually be in that audience for not a TEDx, but for a TED. And Jonathan Haidt's, this was like a little preview on Instagram, which is fascinating, by the way, that again, we have this organization that wants these talks, these 18-minute talks, and you have someone who's talking about, worsening attention spans and, how these technologies, these ed tech companies, these tech companies, ed tech and tech companies, whether they're involved in education or not, are like draining our information. And then Instagram or then TED actually posting a 90-second video because they know nobody's going to look at it. So the talk is about how how we should be techno skeptics. And I'm going to challenge that term very, very soon. And so the thing that's like, I'm listening to this and he says this, and I thought it was really interesting because I never heard this argument because I've always hey, we're not really helping kids to, live, we're not even talking the future, in the present right now. So he said something that really stuck out to me. And I read it verbatim from the TED Talk. And I actually got it from the TED site, which is beautiful because I was able to copy and paste, right? I didn't write it in hand notes, copy and paste because it actually has all of the captions there. And then I could actually blog about it. So if I would have handwritten it and done nothing with it, what? But now that I actually copied it and actually can talk about it, to write about it, it's going to actually be stuck in my brain. So this is what Haidt says in the talk. All right, now I've just told you that we need to greatly reduce the role of these technologies in our kids' lives. And some of you may be thinking, oh, hold on a second. I want my child to be successful in the digital future and the digital workplace. So why not give them a head start? 2 reasons. The first is that these technologies are extremely easy to use. Your kid doesn't need a 10-year head start to master social media and AI. And second is that being a digital native does not confer an advantage. For many kids, it's a curse because it messes with their attention systems and their motivational systems. It teaches them that there's always a little bit of reward, a little bit of dopamine available, just one swipe away. And that undermines the ability to do difficult or sustained cognitive work like reading a book. Cognitive work also, and that's the end of the whole quote. And I'm going to get to each one part of it. The interesting thing about the cognitive work is they post this on Instagram, 90-second video. And when I actually looked at it, this was within 24 hours. It actually had 18,000 likes, over 18,000 likes. Now, I didn't see the view count, so not full disclosure, But I also tell you this, 18,000 likes does not mean 18,000 people watched it fully. They might have saw the first 5 seconds, click, and then moved on because they love Jonathan Haidt's work. They don't want to watch the whole thing, but they want to support it. But then I went to the TED Talk, which was 18 minutes, and it had been there for 5 days, 11,000 views. And I actually have the screen capture in the blog post. So again, we're talking about students having a decreased attention span. Many of you, people started watching this, unless I capture their attention in 5 seconds, let's have like graphics and, do my hair all nice and have, soft lighting, I'll lose you, right? It's all these other things. It doesn't matter the information. It's like, how do I present it to you? How do I share this with you, right? And so that is part of the irony of all of this, is that we keep talking about kids. The adults are having problems with attention spans. You might be listening to this right now. Here's what I'm going to encourage you. Blog about it. Blog about what I'm saying, right? Talk about the points that I'm sharing and doing this, or are you going to watch this, move on, and not do anything with it, which is something we do as adults. I do it all the time too. And I shared in the post, in the last 5 years, I have read more physical paper books than I have in my 46 years prior, because I've been really intentional about carving time out of my day to write. With all of this stuff, we actually have to really focus on this. And part of it was like my attention span was getting shorter. Part of it was honestly my anxiety was really, really bad. So I thought, maybe I'm going to start reading, just spending some time doing this. It wasn't so much about the information. It was just to like chill, just to relax. And so I've had to train myself through this process, and me using these things and be able to say like, hey, here's some of the pitfalls of this, and here's how it grabbed my attention. Here's some things that I do. I think it gives me a little credibility when I'm talking to students, as opposed to the person who never uses this and then says you shouldn't be using it, right? And so I think that's part of it too. But it was the first point that really stuck out to me, is that he again, I'll go back to the quote. He says, the first is that these technologies are extremely to use. Your kid doesn't need a 10-year head start to master social media and AI. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That's the issue. These things are so easy to use that if we don't teach kids how to think deeply, if we don't teach kids the repercussions of these instantaneous actions, that's where a lot of the problems will start to happen. And I actually, it's funny because you're right, this is I used to joke about this when I do these workshops and I talk about social media and connection. I say, hey, everyone, I'm going to teach you how to create a Twitter account. So here's what I need you to do, okay? So I'm going to go step by step. I want you to go to the site twitter.com. And so when you go to that site, I want you to press the sign up button. And when you press the sign up button, it will say, put in this information, fill it out. There you go. That's all you need to do. That's how easy this is, right? So like, it was kind of a joke, but a lot of people were like, oh, I don't know how to make an account, because they weren't willing to press the buttons. The making of the account is not the issue. It's like, how do you use it to network? How do you use it to learn? That's the thing, right? And so when I talked about this is part of that issue, is that all this stuff is so easy. When do you actually deal with some of the difficult things? And I share the story in Fort Scale. I'm not going to share the whole thing with you. I encourage you to read the book, right? And will you read a book? Let's see. So I hope you do. You can check Forward Together down in the links down below. I share this story about how I was actually sitting in a session. I started tweeting about someone that I didn't really like their presentation. I started kind of hammering that person. And I won't get into the whole crux of it. And I walked away from it, never thought twice about it, until I ended up going out for dinner with him and his wife that evening. I didn't know we were going to meet. And to sit across the table from someone and see the impact of what I had, and was horrible, but it was also good, because it taught me something that I've held on to ever since. That simple, easy thing to do could destroy. Took me 3 seconds, and I probably destroyed someone's day, if not week, if not longer. And that is part of the issue. I think about this other story. It is, I have someone who I mentor. He's a young guy, and I told him I was going to share this, and he's in his late 20s, but I met him when he was probably like 21, 22 years old. And I would give him advice, and he would kind of talk, a little bit rude to me sometimes online and text. And as soon as I ever felt that, what I do? Boom, I would call him. And he hated it. He hated it. And it was interesting because he had no issue being rude to me over text, But the second I called him and he'd have to talk to me, that was hard, right? Talking smack over text, easy. Talking in person when you disagree with somebody, not so easy. You have to teach those skills through the process. And so I think that this is why I wanted to bring this up to you. You know, part of this, this is not new, by the way. I've been talking about this for a long time. And I wrote this question: has doing the easy thing with the implementation of technology in schools created the issue in the first place? In 2012, so this is almost 15 years ago, right? I wrote this article for Edutopia titled 21st Century Schools or 21st Century Learning. And my concern was that we should not just be dumping technology into classrooms without talking about meaningful learning first. And I said this: shouldn't we try to figure out what the learning looks like and then discuss the device? It seems sometimes that we're doing the exact opposite. Let's continue to focus on the learning, but really focus our time when we get together to figure out what it should look like. We can figure out the devices later. The problem we are now facing is a lot of these issues with the anti-technology movement, which I kind of understand. And the reason why is because we dumped the tech and thinking that this is going to be a solution, where we're saying, no. We need to talk about the learning. What is going to be different with this? Not, hey, we're going to just do everything we used to do now digital. Because when you have access to these devices that have all these other things that you can do on them, I'm not going to do a worksheet on it. It's not interesting to me at all. And so I wanted to bring this up because part of the reason I want to talk about all this and break this through, I know this is coming up when I speak and talk about technologies. No matter what I say, they're going to be like, Jonathan Haidt said this, Jonathan Haidt said this. And because I want to be able to address them from a place of abundance of information rather than a scarcity, I went and actually listened to the entire TED Talk. I broke it down, went through it, and there's a lot that I agree with, to be honest with you, but there's some things that I have a different stance on. But I think what matters is, again, I could have just put myself in a bubble, listened to all the things that I agree with, and stayed there, because that's easy. But what I did here was I went to a place, listened to things I disagree with, to actually really understand the viewpoint of someone else, but also strengthen my own opinions and ideas on the matter. It doesn't mean that I don't agree with some of the things that Jonathan Haidt said. I actually do. But some of the things I disagree with, and I have a different stance on it, but I can articulate it, and I can also make his position for him because I actually really understand why he's saying what he's saying. But that's hard. And I think that's the point. This stuff is so easy that if you don't teach kids how to actually do the hard stuff, we're going to make more mistakes. And you know how I know this? Because the adults are already doing it themselves, myself included. And so that's why I want to share this with you all. Anyways, I just want to talk this out. You can actually check out the blog post down below. But thank you so much for your time. If you listen to the entire podcast, I appreciate you. Comment. Let me know you listened to the entire podcast. Because I didn't say it at the beginning, I said at the end. Because if you made it to the end, you did the hard thing. That's kind of the point. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for all you do for your schools. Have a wonderful day. Take care.